Good morning. Glad to worship with all of you this morning, to be with you here and to celebrate the baptism of these three babies with you here too. We're celebrating baptism at two of our services today, one at the earlier service at 9:15 and then three more here. And we are so fortunate here at Good Shepherd that baptism is a regular part of the rhythm of our life. We're so fortunate to be in a parish that's growing. You know, in the stories we have handed down to us about Jesus, we have stories of Jesus being baptized. And Jesus was, of course, Jewish. So this practice of initiation into the community through baptism with water, it's one that we inherit from Judaism before us. And the earliest writings we have in our New Testament, the letters from Paul, written down beginning maybe 15 or 20 years after Jesus' life, Paul writes about baptism. It was already part of the tradition for the followers of Jesus, even in those very early decades. Paul writes to the Romans that we are buried with Christ through baptism into his death, in order that we too may live a new life. We are joined with Christ in his death and raised with him to a new life. We will say that in our baptismal service in just a few minutes. That we are joined with Christ in his death, that we may be reborn. You know, I love our tradition for many reasons. Y'all will be glad to know this. One of those reasons is that we have kept and we have recovered ancient liturgies, sacraments, and practices of our faith. You know, for me, the bread and the wine at communion makes real a truth that goes beyond words. When we receive this bread together, it takes me out of just my mind, and it enacts a truth that we proclaim, that we're connected to each other, and that we're connected to God. We don't just say it, we do it. But I do wonder if we could learn some symbolism from our more Protestant brothers and sisters when it comes to baptism. You know, with the big pool where the person being baptized goes all the way under the water and then back out. These babies today would not like it. The truth is that we are enacting, that we are buried with Christ in his death, and that we rise out of that water to newness of life now. That this path that involves leaving behind some of what we thought we were, some of what we thought life was about, and taking on in its place something new. Our path. In it, something dies, and we are reborn now. We are enacting that today in this special moment of baptism, but it's a truth that we live out all the time. In every moment, God is washing us clean and saying, from right here, from right now, new life is open for you. The abundant life of God is open for you. You know, one of my favorite spiritual authors, he writes that our path often involves more unlearning than it does learning. Maybe that's why the symbol of our joining this community is being washed clean. That we have more to unlearn, more to wash away, and then we have to rise into a new pattern of life. Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry. We're in the second of 6 Sundays where Jesus will use an analogy of bread to describe what he's all about and what God is about for us. He will describe himself, like he did today, as the person who can bring fullness of life. He can feed us with this bread. And I believe that Jesus opens for us, for me and for you, a pattern of life, a pattern of commitments and experiences that can draw us into the fullness of life that God wants for us, the kind of life that can take away our hunger and our thirst. And I believe that this is a pattern of practice and experience. You know, when we practice generosity, we increase the chances that we're going to know this fullness. And giving away the things we have is a good start. But I mean something more than just that, too. In the stories we have about Jesus, he gives himself away. That's what one bishop writes about him. It's more like the kind of giving of a parent to a child, but without the complexities of family dynamics. That's part of the pattern we see in the life of Jesus. And when we practice that too, giving of ourselves generously, we're better able to know and experience something of God. Here's the second practice. Jesus knows his own connection to the holy. And it gives him an ability to see the holy, to see God in other people. And there's a direct connection between those two, in Jesus and in us. When we know our own connection to something beyond just us, when you and I experience that we are connected to something beyond just us, then we are more able to see that same connection in other people, even when they are different from us. And when we practice this, and let me say for me, and I bet for you, it takes committed practice to see God in other people. But when we practice this day after day, then we are better able to know something about the new life that God desires for us. We see in Jesus someone able to step away from all the busyness around him for periods of time to reconnect with a sense of groundedness and purpose. He doesn't seem to find his worth only in doing all the things he's got to do, but he finds his worth in his being, in himself. And that lets him step away and recharge. And it's better when we are able to do the same, isn't it? Without the fear that when we step away, we'll lose something of ourselves. And an hour set aside on Sundays just for worship is a wonderful beginning. And daily meditation and prayer would be an excellent next step, with no agenda other than to say, I am open to your presence, God. And when you and I practice this too, we are able to know something of the holy through our experience. You know, we see in Jesus someone who has a vision of justice and fairness and forgiveness that does not depend on the opinion of the moment. For him, this vision came from knowing that everyone, even the most difficult outsider, the most notorious sinner, everyone has God at his or her core. And the more you and I practice this same commitment to justice, to fairness, to forgiveness, the more we will know something of God through our experience too. You know, in this doesn't have to be all serious and heavy. This can mean enjoying the people around us. An abundance of life that is freeing and light. None of these practices or experiences for us necessarily lead directly to some sense of fulfillment. It is not a direct line from A to B. These kinds of commitments can lead to heartbreak. And if you do them enough, that will surely be the result for you some of the time. And look at the pattern shown to us by Jesus. On the surface, it is as much loss as it is gain. But you and I believe, you and I trust that there is more here than just what is operating on the surface. That over time and through God, commitments like these will reshape us into the people God calls us to be. They are a pattern and practice and set of experiences in which we know God. They're part of the path that will take away our hunger and our thirst. And I invite you today to imagine what you are called to leave behind, to unlearn, to wash away, and what might instead take its place. Jesus invites us all to see in him the pattern and practice of holiness, the pattern and rhythm that fills us up. Follow me, he says, and I will wash you clean and will show you the path of fullness of life. Follow me, he says, and I will take away your hunger and your thirst.